validate reliability of a research paper, save time on due diligence using 5 questions on authority bias, evidence, comparison, impact based on Doomberg's framework, TRAAP Test, CRAAP Test, radar, and Dalio believability questions. So research to a large extent is a media endeavor. So, there's significant incentive to reach out for the fame, surprise with the breakthroughs, and, confirm extraordinary biases. And so it's a lot about, publishing something that other people find interesting, referencing something that other people know, to sort of add something new, and basically make sure that what you write is gonna be very popular, which is not the same as adding something substantially important. And because there is, this not 100% alignment, there could be problems with, there could be this gap may cause problems. The most common problems are irrelevant comparisons, misunderstandings regarding what is measured, and so such that it's good to have ways to avoid wasting time on papers that may not be completely valid or completely true or accurate. And so from perspective of correctness, completeness, and importance. And also, if you want to use the research in production, it may, even though the results may be valid in some way, they still may not take you anywhere in your business territory. So popular sort of questions I saw around that are good to ask is that what is the main idea in one sentence? Usually in the paper there is one main idea. Maybe sometimes there are 2 or 3, but there shouldn't be more. And it should be possible to summarize the main idea into one sentence very simply, such that even a non-expert could understand it. And if there is no central point, it's kind of suspicious that it's almost like something is that what's important is trying to be hidden, that it's just some general idea paper without anything actually adding. Then the second question is, what is the impact? Third questions, what are the unknowns, what we don't know, what doesn't fit well? Now, I would like to continue with these Doomberg's 5 questions framework, which I found useful, and which I hope could inspire some of the questions you can use to ask about a research paper. So Doomberg is some independent industry research group. They publish some Substack, and they also published 5 questions to ask about research. It's in some paywalled article, which I don't have access to, but they talked about it on a podcast, and I expanded a little bit on what they are using in there. So what we can ask about a paper or some other general publishing thing that was published. So we can ask about the author's credibility. What is the reputation and history of the researchers and the institutions they are affiliated with? Do they have at least 3 successes within the domain already previously accomplished? You can ask, to follow the money who funded the researchers, who funded the research, what are the biases, are the livelihoods, depending of the researcher, depending on some sort of company, is some particular result desired more within this context. So if the research is funded by a for-profit company, this, for example, could happen in domains like supplement industry. This can also happen in other, nutrition and so on. So is there some goal-oriented bias impacting the study? And you can see this, you can experiment with this a little bit yourself. I'm sure that you've been invested in some kind of result before. If you invest in a company, it's you can see for yourself how it changes your views. You really start to have a very strong bias. Also, there may be the opposite effect. You may have this is maybe not very common in the research, but for example, there are these effects in opposite direction. If you have, for example, disgruntled employee that may have an X to grind. Another thing could be we could evaluate the connections, who the author is connected with. And also, we can also ask if is the author an outsider. Sometimes those can bring some new insight, but at the same time they will have less authority and experience. And second question we can ask is about the publisher's credibility. Who published these results? What is the history of this publication? What is the reputation of the publisher? What are what reviewers and critics who peer-reviewed the research, and or was this self-published on archive, like LK99? Were the peer reviewers even familiar with the topic? Sometimes peer review doesn't necessarily mean that the peer reviewers will understand and have time to understand and desire to understand the research. So peer review is not perfect. Then you have republishers. There are many social media where things get republished. And here we can ask, okay, if this was republished here, or where else was it republished? What is the primary source? And who is republishing the research? Who is not republishing the research? Are the multiple sites publishing this? Then you have audience bias. Throughout the times, throughout the history, there are various popular ideas in populations, and there may be a significant bias in the audience, preventing some wider publications of certain ideas and not the other ideas. Why was this published now? Is it something about the current environment that's related to the results? Okay, third questions. It's about the scientific process and strength of the evidence. At what stage of the research is? What sort of validation we have? How often are similar results within similar stage invalid and retracted? What is the specific evidence that we have for the research? What are the metrics? How the metrics were compared? Is the comparison relevant and valid? Are there some other hidden effects? Is it, for example, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial where you try to randomize the two different groups such that you don't have some correlation effects which are unrelated to what you are studying? You are double blinding, so the researcher doesn't know what group is the person assigned to. Are they giving placebo or not? right? And then you have a control. So you have a one group which is having no effect applied. So this is a burden of evidence point. Then it's transparency. Are the numbers that we are working with published? Is the code published? Can we reproduce this easily? Can we cross-check the numbers? Can we cross-check the statistical distributions? Is there something strange about the data? There are methods that can actually help you finding something strange about what kind of numbers were used. Are the numbers randomly generated from uniform distribution, or do they really remind us something that's maybe coming out of the real world measurement, or is this just some invalid data? Then we have a scientific context. We can think about the research in terms of the context of the specific area of study. The idea, is there a clear main finding, or is there an attempt to create confusion, adding unnecessary ideas instead? Is there a clear main message which is coherent? What previous research does this paper cite and stands on? What are the assumptions of the paper that are or are not proven? Can we cross-check? Is the explanation for the results correct? Sometimes we have a result that may be true, but then maybe have an invalid explanation. Both could be informative about something. If there's invalid explanation, the results are more likely to be incorrect. How does it compare? How does current research compare to similar research that is related? Oftentimes it's not first paper. People want to write about things that are interesting. So how does this paper compare to this other paper? What are trends in this area of research? And also we can do some magnitude estimates, right? If we have some big results, do they make sense? Can we cross-validate it with some simple calculation coming from different sources that are sort of orthogonal? Okay, what we expect from the future? What is the impact? What is the outlook? How large will the impact of the study be? If the impact is very, very large, then extraordinary evidence and proof is required. Are the rewards for successful implementation of this new research very large? If they are, it's the same question. Now, when the results will be reproduced and tested, do we know somebody who is going to try this or already tried this in production? This would be effectively even more than a reproduction, because if you apply it in production systems, usually it's gonna be involving, that people can implement it incorrectly, but if they implement it successfully, this can be very strong signal, because some people are betting their money on the results. But it's not 100%. There are biases there also. What are the risks, unknowns, and hidden problems that may invalidate the results or impact? And how probable or likely they are? What are the downsides if you experiment with this method? How costly could it be? So these were the 5 questions. I can get back quickly to them. So they were about author credibility, publisher credibility, scientific process and evidence, scientific context, future expectations and impact. There are other evaluation methods. For example, very well known is Ray Dalio's believability, where the people who have repeatedly and successfully accomplished the thing in a question, and have a great explanation when you ask them, those are the most believable. So this is one of the tests we can use. Then there are these others. You can investigate them for yourself. Usually, so here we ask currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. Stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace the claims. Timeliness, relevance, authority, audience, purpose. Rational, authority, date, accuracy, and relevance. Patient, problem, intervention, comparison, and outcome. So these are other methods to explore. I'm not very familiar with them. So what are the common problems in machine learning that we are interested in the most? So often, what we want from the research is something that will stand test of time, and it will stand test of the usefulness in the industry in the long term. And so there are many common problems in machine learning research papers. So for example, we could be evaluating architecture, but based on models with different parameter count. If you have much bigger model, it's much likelier that it will outperform just because of the more parameters and not because of the architecture. Outperforming on unknown or invalid benchmarks. If the paper is evaluating the architecture on some obscure benchmark dataset, which is not very relevant and seems strange, it may be suspicious. The results may not be very important. This is, for example, a problem in recommendation systems, that often large-scale datasets are very scarce, and so we cannot really compare the results well. Are there production irrelevant metrics? So, for example, in the recommendation system, mean square error at least was very popular in the past, whereas recall or NDCG precisions are more useful for deployments. Then another problem is that the new paper, maybe doesn't have better architecture, but they did so much seed tuning, they did so much hyperparameters tuning and training, that they will simply outperform the other papers by spending more on training the better neural network. And maybe their architecture is not actually better, and the training time, actually, that's something that's going to be important in production also, and it may be a little bit obscured. Then testing set leak. Everybody knows this. If you leak your test set into training set, you're gonna have better results, and this is very much a problem in web scale datasets, which contain, the data spills over the internet, and then if you train on the internet, you may find the testing set in the training set, and then this will invalidate the comparison. Then preprocessing of the data and data filtering can have a much larger effect than the architecture. So if there's difference even in this area, this could actually explain the outperformance. Then non-reproducibility. Some papers don't provide code or the dataset, and so it's very hard for anybody to try it for themselves, and so we will not know, at least for some time, if the method is valid. Then not citing research. So this is more of it makes the paper harder to read and harder to put into context. But there may be this bias that groups may not want to cite between themselves. For example, two companies may not want to give advertisement to another company, and so they may not cite their research. It's great to have this set of questions and this sort of inspiration which you can use to ask about research. But ultimately, you will find the results for yourself only once you successfully implement the method for yourself on your particular problem terrain. So depending on your business territory, this may or may not be worth your time to spend time on implementing a research paper. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you got this will help you to avoid research or even my blog posts or anything you encounter. And you can follow me on various social platforms. I have also a website, wacławkosar.com, and yeah, you can subscribe there. You can subscribe to my Twitter and YouTube. And okay, thank you very much. I hope you like this.